Welcome to the Build Inside podcast. Today we've got Josh Tudor with us. Josh is the youngest professional clerk of works in the UK, and we're going to discuss his role, how he got into the role, what's changed whilst he's been into the role, and the importance of doing our job properly and from a third-party perspective. Josh, just before we started this, we discussed a subject that I didn't know whether to pick up or not, and that was your age. And you've just reassured me. No, it's great to speak about because actually you are the youngest clerk of works, youngest qualified clerk of works.
Yes, yeah.
With the institute. So we'll touch on that a little bit later. But really, I think it'd be great to just have a quick overview from yourself on your background, bit of a précis version, if you will, because then we're going to go into a little bit more depth further down the line. So, what is your job, and where do you do it, and who do you do it for?
So my job currently is Clerk of Works. Generally, I'm in pretty much up north, Leeds, Cambridge as well, and London.
So what does a typical day look like for you?
There's a lot of travelling.
Right, okay.
So yeah, I travel a lot to Leeds. I've got a couple projects where it's high-rise, so a lot to do with facade systems, things like that. Typical day is pretty much most of the day walking around site, going through my progress photos, trying to get what I think the client would pretty much want from their report, and go through any tracker items for any observations I've picked up.
Okay, excellent. And in terms of, you mentioned a few disciplines there, facades and general development. What sort of things, is there anything common at the moment, trending in your findings, anything that you see more often than not, things you'd prefer not to see as much?
There's certain barriers with manufacturers where, because they're the ones that most people will come across as clerk of works for facade systems and contractors, of course, where they're very basic fire protection systems. But the issue is they've still got a little bit to do with them with their testing and manufacturer details. So a lot of the times they get missed out. It's simple things to do with like gaps and making sure there's actual sealant on them in some cases.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So in terms of your day to day, what are the key challenges you seem to face in your role at the moment, would you say?
Nowadays, it's strangely enough, it's to do with communication, I'd say, because obviously the clerk of works role itself is coming back from pretty much not the brink of death, but coming back from
it was very much sidelined, wasn't it?
Yeah, so yeah, because of the whole contract situation. So a lot of the times it's the client's not fully understanding what the clerk of works role involves.
That's a really interesting point. I mean, and we'll perhaps come back to it, but I think that's something that we all need to work on as a professional body. Is this awareness?
Absolutely.
And then in many ways, that's what we're trying to do today. So
yeah.
So that's interesting. So going back to the beginning of your career, then you were and still are the youngest clerk of works. How did you balance your experience against your technical knowledge at that point? Was that a difficult thing to do, or did you what was your experience like there? Obviously, going into what some might say seasoned professionals,
absolutely
challenging their requirements, challenging their answers.
Well, you can imagine I did get quite a lot. The whole I've been doing this for 40 years spiel, which granted, fair enough. There was a lot of kickback at the beginning. A lot of kickback. I'd get yelled at, not thrown at me, but I'd have stuff thrown around me like brooms or dust bricks, stuff like that. I was, in a case, the devil on site, the young devil on site. I was the whippersnapper that nobody liked.
Do you think the age had a lot to do with that, or do you think? I mean, because I can say wholeheartedly, I've experienced some of those things myself as well, and I wish I was a little bit younger than what I am. So was it a challenge to be younger, or do you think, or perhaps you don't know any different?
I think it was definitely a challenge to be younger. Not to do with arguments, because I think they argue with Clerk of Works, contractors and clients quite often.
Yeah.
Either when they don't know something or they're at the point where they don't want to know something. No, I think for me it was more being involved with stuff that they don't know about and also you're just finding out about. Like to do with like brickwork or to do with things that they would expect to know after 30 years, 40 years kind of situation. So yeah, there was a lot of kickback when I was younger, but over time it did slow down quite considerably, especially since I joined just before the Grenfell disaster. And I feel like after Grenfell, the industry has changed quite a lot.
Well, a huge amount. I think the Grenfell disaster opened a lot of eyes. It set aside a lot of ignorances, and a lot of arrogances, and probably a terrible incident, but good timing in terms of career, in terms of the industry changes, in terms of the requirement for inspectorates.
Yeah.
Just going back to that, so you said over time, things mellowed out, the communications improved. So obviously you gained your respect there.
Yeah, there was like at the beginning, I created a lot of enemies, mostly because I would say my communication wasn't great. It was more where I was taught by a lot of Clerk of Works, it was to confront with evidence rather than finally learning over time to confront with evidence, but in a way that helps both the contractor and the client, to be an unbiased source. So at the beginning, I did make enemies with contractors
I think it's an inherent risk, isn't it? But, I agree with you wholeheartedly. Being a neutral third party is actually the true value of a Clerk of Works and a construction inspectorate. Being able to analyse, to assess, and then present findings against any given situation without bias is actually the most important part of it.
Yeah, a lot of contractors don't realise, and clients, to be fair, because I say all the time with contractors when they do argue at first, I say, look, it is going to be an issue to rectify this observation. But at the end of the day, if anything does go wrong, especially with fire stopping or to do with structural, they can turn around and say, this isn't our fault. We did it exactly to the manufacturer's instructions. Yeah. Goes back to the manufacturer, goes back to the testing. Yeah. And I've always had I suppose the basis to say, I think that the contractor and the client, or mostly the contractor, should do everything in their power to protect themselves. So everything goes back to the manufacturer and testing. That's what it's supposed to be.
Well, absolutely, because the focus of compliance was at that point. The manufacturing, the formation of the product, the testing of the product, the extensive testing of the product, because testing, as we know, is no mean feat. It's quite a robust process. In terms of discharging responsibilities, I couldn't agree with you more. Go back to what we know works.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think people have this messed up philosophy in construction, not specific roles, but I think a lot of people seem to think that it should go straight to the contractor or the subcontractor, which in a sense, yes, depending on how they build it, how they construct it, how they fix it. But I think if they do it correctly, it should go back to where it was, where it originated.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think a lot of the confusions, the things you just outlined there, in terms of the recourse, if you will, is led by contracts. Yeah, and I think there's a lot to be done with contracts in terms of, and without going into it too much, because everyone's discussed it a lot lately, including myself. The Building Safety Act will sort a lot of those things out, because it
100%, yeah,
it creates roles and responsibilities, accountability.
Yeah.
So we look forward to those changes. We just look forward to them soon.
Yeah, that's
it seems it's a bit of a
long waiting game.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, no. Okay, excellent. So in terms of that's what you sort of do. Now, what I'd like to do is just take a step back, if we don't mind, and just look at how you got into the role, where you started. So what were you doing before this?
So I went to a college first. I don't know if I can mention the college. I probably won't.
You can mention it, and we'll cut it out.
A college called Barton Peveril in Eastleigh. Went there to do business level 2 because I failed my English, so I had to repeat that. In the meantime, they basically made you do a lesson where they put you on a website. It might have been called Go Construct at the time.
Okay.
And it was put your father's job in and your mother's job in, and it would configure and put like a list of what jobs it thinks you should do. And at the time,
Quite shrewd in terms of inputs, isn't it? Oh yeah, okay.
It's terrible that that's how it started.
No, I don't think it is. I think it's an unusual way.
It really is, yeah.
But I don't think it's terrible. I think, you know, your reputation precedes you. You're obviously good at your job, so we've all benefited from Go Construct or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry, I cut you off. But carry on. Yeah.
No,
So from there, what happened?
So it basically came up with jobs it thinks I should do at the time. Or my mother previously was a housing officer, and my father was an asbestos remover.
Wow.
Or tester.
Yeah.
And the first job it came up with, I don't know if it was the first or second, but it was Clerk of Works. At the time when I read it, it didn't really state that obviously the average age was 55 or 50. I just read the description and went, that looks good. That looks like something I want to do.
Sure.
So I switched to the next college, which was actual EC college that do a lot of apprenticeship programs. Right. And they still do technical courses. And I did a level 3 extended diploma in construction and built environment, which was... It was one of those courses where it was good, but it was everything smashed into one. So it's like if you wanted to be a project manager, QS, site manager, everything to do with the construction industry. So it was basic information, if you will.
Basic and sporadic, probably. I think great for an overview.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, there was no specialism in it at all. But the first lesson, they basically said, "What do you want to be?" Put everyone up in a line at the front. And the teacher, or the lecturer, a man named Bob, sat down in front of us and said, "What do you want to do? What do you want to do?" And you can imagine most of them were project manager, site manager, quantity surveyor. There was a lot of quantity surveyors. And funny enough, I was right at the end. I was quite shy at the time. And he said, "What do you want to do?" And I said, "Clerk of Works." I've never seen a man so confused in his life. Because all the others didn't know what that was. They looked at me like, confused. Bob was the only one that knew it. Confused in a sense, but also was like, okay, do you really want to do it? And I said yes. And it kind of went from there slowly.
I really like that. You're breaking the mould. You're stepping out and breaking the mould, and the industry's all the better for it. I think we need more people to do that in the industry. As you say, the average age is 50, 55, whatever it is. I'm not completely sure, but and that is great because it offers so much knowledge, experience, and professionalism. However, unless we fill the gaps at the front of that, you know, that age is also going to be that average age is not going to slow down. It's going to continue to get older, and ultimately, at a time where the industry needs a clerk of works the most, we're in a position where unless we can fill the ranks further down in the age gap, then we're not going to have a clerk of works profession to offer.
Yeah.
Maybe sounds extreme, but you know, fundamentally it's correct.
I think it's definitely correct. Seeing as, you know, we went from early 90s, there were so many clerk of works after the whole contract situation where we got taken out.
Yeah.
It went so far down, it was below 1,000, I'm pretty
yeah,
sure.
and you look at the size of the industry in the UK on its own, it's huge.
It's massive.
It's huge. So obviously the formation of the Building Safety Act has given us some more traction. We seem to, I think I'll be right in saying I'm certainly a lot busier. I'm sure you are too.
Yep.
But that's great until there's not enough of us.
Yeah, exactly that. Yes.
Because if I know nothing, I know this: a clerk of works is good when they can do their job, and they need time to do their job. They need the space to do their job properly.
We are, I believe, from all the clerk of works I've talked to, and they've talked to me. Because I'm the chairman of the Southern chapter currently.
That's further down my list. Hold your horses.
I get a lot of conversations between clerk of works, and a lot of the times they do say that they're stretched thin. They're so stretched thin they don't have time to research materials. They don't have time to do what a clerk of works should do. So a lot of the times they just raise it as an observation, put as much as they know, put as much as they can find out.
Yeah.
Briefly, and then leave it at that, and then hope the contractor can kind of help in the sense of finding that info.
Yeah, and look, we'd all like more time.
Yeah.
But I think what we really need is more structure.
Oh yeah, actually.
You know, I think if we had a structure where we played a fundamental part in the process, where we were an integral part to the process, and there were basic thresholds for us to work towards or to provide information against for the contractors to work towards, that would be far more valuable to the industry than the way things are at the moment.
Yeah.
But I feel that that's a step ahead. I think we're sort of heading into a new era of construction, and I think the next 5 years will be very telling in terms of how construction professionals, inspectorates, clerk of works operate within the industry.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's so many changes currently already you've got, with the whole Grenfell disaster, you've got fire clerk of works, people that specifically just deal with facades. And I feel like there's like ecological clerk of works. I haven't met any yet. I'd love to. I don't know where they're hiding. Somewhere. Yeah, I hear about them, but I never meet them. It's becoming a thing where now there's specialist clerk of works in specific specialisms.
Yeah, and that's not a bad thing, I don't.
No, absolutely.
I think it's a good thing, but it does lead me on to my next point, and that is that. So myself, I think the people who have heard me speak before know that I came from a trade background into construction management, into higher ranking management, and then ultimately into compliance and clerk of works. Yeah. You came through an education route,
apprenticeship route,
apprenticeship education route. But do you think there's enough? I mean, you found this by accident.
I did, yes, 100% by accident.
Wouldn't it be great if it wasn't an accident? Wouldn't it be great if the education system recognised the value of the role in the industry?
Oh,
as well as
100%. Yeah, there needs to be something in place, which I believe the Institute of Clerk of Works are definitely running towards. And I've been asked a couple of times to kind of help out with that.
Yeah.
To get young people interested, because a lot of young people are interested in building surveying and quantity surveying, but I like to think that if they saw clerk of works as well, I believe they would see that as more of a boon, just because there's more experience on site, and you get a lot more mentorship by clerk of works, and I think that's what's made me what I am today. Really,
there is definitely a great community around the clerk of works when you're in it.
Yes,
I think that the challenge that we face, and you're right, I've had various conversations in the Institute of Clerk of Works Inspectorate is pushing hard into this in terms of universities, etc. But he's making his role awareness. I think role awareness is an important factor, and I suppose in having this conversation with you and hoping that other people will listen to this, it's reaching out to our colleagues and saying, look, let people know what you do.
Yeah,
let people know what we do, why we do it, and how we do it.
I think that's exactly the reason why I've kind of come out of the shadows. I'm not very much of a talkative kind of person,
I wouldn't believe that for 1 minute.
Or to bring myself forward. It's only recently that I realised that with the Institute of Clerk of Works pushing for this, I need to do my part as well. So I'm doing a lot for the Institute with newsletters. Specifically, funny enough, one of them that I plan to do, that I've drafted up, is how the clerk of works are with facade systems now, and how many projects nowadays are facade systems just for the Building Safety Fund and the Building Safety Act. But yeah, it's definitely something.
Do you think the role's in its current format? Do you think the role is attractive to people looking to get into the industry?
It's a hard one. I think from what I've seen, it's been more interested for people that are trades rather than any young people or even anyone who's like near the retirement age, which was the usual case for clerk of works. So we're seeing a lot of people that have been a plumber for 10 years and are tired in a sense. They want to do something different. Or I've come across chippies or carpenters that have been on tools for so long they want to make a change.
Well, your bones start hurting at a certain point, don't they? You know, I think, and it's great, and I think that's a good thing. Some of the best clerk of works that I know are ex-tradesmen.
Oh, absolutely! I think the best clerk of works are tradesmen.
They bring so much experience to the table, and also they're site seasoned, if you will. There's a certain culture on site, isn't there? That when you're new to it, I imagine it's quite abrasive.
Yeah,
you know, it's not as what's the word? It's just quite a direct level of communication.
That's it, yeah.
Construction.
I think the hardest thing I've seen building surveyors, quantity surveyors, contract administrators deal with is the fact that the office environment is completely different to on-site environment.
Yeah.
I've seen them kick up a fuss when they hear one thing, and it's something that's direct and normal on site.
Yeah.
But they
no one even threw anything at them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They have the little cushy teas and everything. We
No,
get builder's
absolutely.
tea, no milk, or gone off milk, one of the two.
Yeah, or even water would be nice sometimes.
Yeah.
The basics. So in terms of so I've sort of gone at this a little bit ad hoc, but I think it's been an interesting way to discuss it. So we know how you got into the industry. We know what you do in the industry. Now let's talk about the industry itself. What in terms aside from the stuff we've already touched on, i.e. the requirements to look at fire stopping more, the requirements to look at facades and component structures. From a cultural perspective, what do you think? Have you noticed any changes in the industry in your time doing this role? Notable ones.
Apart from fire, obviously, I think to do with new builds, I think a lot of people are realizing that whole situation where new builds flew up quickly. People are starting to, like, just everyday people who are buying houses or getting a shared partnership, shared ownership.
Yeah.
They're realizing the depth of what can go wrong and what is wrong with building so fast.
Yeah.
And that seems to be like a massive thing that's going on. I mean, Clerk of Works, they're being involved with it heavily because you get snagging Clerk of Works nowadays.
You do. But again, snagging is always an interesting one. I used to have a rule. If I took a contract, I'd say, look, we'll agree the benchmarks at the beginning. And if I go into a unit and there's more than 5, what I would call, not serious, but 5 defects, then I'm going to walk away because one of the problems, and this is actually, I'll answer my own question to a certain extent here, but this is one of the things that's changed for me. You used to just get railed into these houses. Now it's done, we've completed it, we're done. And you'd find 15, 20, sometimes more.
And they would still take
issues. And at some point, and then you got to draw a line, haven't you? And you got to say, well, at what point am I doing somebody else's job here?
Yep.
Because, we set the benchmark at the beginning.
You end up being the finishing foreman, really.
Well, you do, and frankly, there's already a finishing foreman, or there should be at least.
Yeah.
And, it takes away from what we're trying to do here in terms of setting those brand standards, if you want, from the housing perspective. Ultimately, we've got to stay in our lane, I suppose, is what I'm trying to say. Now that's changed for me recently. I mean, I've not done housing for a while, but the last housing I did do, systems had improved, technology had come into play, the likes of field view or snagging tools and things like that.
Yeah.
And the ability to make people accountable.
Yeah.
So, do you use any technology in your role?
Yeah, definitely. Field view. There's one called Snagmaster. Site Audit Pro, which is everyone knows about that one pretty much. I feel like nowadays, I mean, I started. It might make me sound old, but I started with a notebook and pen.
I still do that. So,
and that's something I still enjoy, and it's still something I like to do. But there is such a hard push now for Snagmaster, Site Audit Pro, all of these things, because they want them to look professional, which I understand. But I've always had the point of view where a Clerk of Works report should be different to like building control, where they do specific wording.
Yeah.
Because a Clerk of Works should be their opinion, their advice, their statement, really, and it should be their wording on it, not just
generic.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that's a key thing that should differentiate between builder control and Clerk of Works.
Yeah, no, I do agree, and it's just to follow on to that. With technology, I think technology is a great place for it, but it does make it a faceless process.
Exactly that. Yeah.
And 9 problems out of 10 will be solved by a Clerk of Works by going and speaking directly to the person that the problem pertains to. So whether it be a joinery problem, whether it be a plumbing problem, whether it be an electrical problem, there's almost a new culture developing, or maybe it's not that new actually, where people would rather write it in a report than go and have a conversation.
Exactly that, yeah.
And that frustrates me because
whilst it's important, start that again. Whilst it's important to keep people accountable, the first port of call, in my opinion, should be to have a civil conversation about the issue.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've come across this. I don't like it because of this. Justify the position. Can we, what would you propose we do differently to fix it? And you've got to be careful these days because you don't want to step into that design role.
Exactly that, yeah.
But you can have a decent conversation with people, and quite often, or certainly in my experience, having that conversation with someone is far more valuable to them and to the scheme as a whole than it is just to whack it on a report and for them to receive it third hand, probably with a little bit of aggression from a principal contractor.
Funny enough, I had that recently with barriers on a project where obviously it was to do with design, and I knew originally, or nowadays, you generally just send that to the client and then, or your contract administrator, and they send it to the architect.
Yeah.
But nowadays, I just think it's easier to just talk to the contractor, and the contractor will talk to their drawing guys, their internal guys, to be like, okay, the Clerk of Works has given the advice of this product shouldn't be used.
Yeah.
Obviously, we'd have no power. It's just advice. It's just an opinion.
Yeah.
I tell them about test data, about how it can't be used here and here and here, so I don't think this is a viable product.
In some context.
Yeah. And then most of the time, I've seen it gets done quicker because the contractor realizes that the Clerk of Works has picked up a major issue, and it might cost them quite a bit, but at the end of the day, it saves them massively.
Yeah, and it's that foresight that, an experienced contracts manager, experienced contracts director will use that foresight, and they'll see that actually this.
Yeah, they love it. They think, oh, darn, we'll go have a look at that now, and then it gets resolved, and they come back saying we're using this product now. Sometimes they even say, can you have a look at it? And I say, look, I can give my advice on it, my opinion on it. Yeah. I can't say, like, design-wise.
Yeah.
I can't give you, like, a yes or no, and then you take my word as, like, concrete. But you can use it as clear information.
But it's clear information, and and you're not trying to sell. So this goes back to, we've come full circle to the communication thing, and also to this third-party position. The value in it is the advice that you would give, Josh, would be without, you're not trying to sell anything.
No.
You're not making any profit off a certain product. You're not affiliated to anything. And that's the difference. I think when a lot of product information comes to the market, it comes with design, with design information, and it comes with compliance information, but it also comes with a sales pitch. Yeah. It's always trying to push into something.
Yeah, they're trying to get their foot in the door, kind of.
So yeah, and that's business, and I fully understand it, but it doesn't necessarily. It's sometimes what they don't say rather than what they do say. In terms of that product, and so if you had to split your, just an interesting point then for my benefit really, if you had to split your role now in terms of what you find, from workmanship issues against use of material and design information, do you think it's fairly level through, or do you focus more these days on one aspect over another?
It's a good question. I think nowadays it's still a little bit more to do with workmanship, but most of the time the observations that I raise, I don't like to call them like issues in a sense, because usually sometimes it's just communication between them to say, what are you doing? How are you doing it like this? But yeah, I think most of the observations I raise is they do it wrong just because they haven't fully read the manufacturer's instructions. So I've had that with like LVT flooring, where they didn't read the instructions for the glue compound they had to use. And at the end of the day, what ended up happening was, as soon as they finished the flats, heating goes on, it expands, and you've got loads of LVT that have lifted. And it was just because they didn't prep the glue beforehand and leave it for a certain time period. That's all it was. So a lot of the times it's not a massive mistake, but it can become a problem.
Yeah, the pennies make the pounds, as they say, and it's the small details that make the product. I think you're right. I think that is the place for a Clerk of Works. It's that ability to come away from it, the process as a whole, focus on certain aspects of it, and try your best. And I use those words very carefully because it can be difficult for reasons I'll touch on in a minute. It can be difficult to get access to these points and to this information, mainly because of the way things are done. which does lead me to my next question. What is your experience like? Obviously, the current industry consists typically of a principal contractor.
Yep.
And multiple subcontractors, and sometimes subcontractors have subcontractors.
Yeah.
And it gets very, very confusing. And my question, I suppose, is in a set of circumstances where you don't quite have the support of the principal contractor that you would like. Do you have any experiences where you've just been lost in translation, or whether you feel as though you've been ignored?
Yeah.
I think, and how do you deal with that? Because it's something I experience fairly regularly, to be honest. And I'm always intrigued to understand how my colleagues deal with those situations.
I think it's what I said earlier, where they just don't understand fully what a clerk of works role involves. And a lot of the times when that does happen to me, my first thing I was taught by my mentors was evidence. Evidence.
Yeah.
So I'll put as much evidence as I physically can. I'll do an email. I'll do 2 or 3.
Yeah.
I'll put it on the observation tracker. I'll put it on the report. Just enough to prove my case. And then after I've done that, that's when I kind of go back and go, look, if it's the contract administrator that isn't listening or believes that their opinion or their experience is much more than mine, fair enough. But it is a hard one, because obviously there's nowhere else you can go, really. But I do try to go to the Institute Clerk of Works as well, for help, or I go for contacts on LinkedIn to help out. Because a lot of the times, such as yourself, a lot of the times they've dealt with contract issues specifically.
Yeah. Well, everyone's got a different background, haven't they? And everyone's got a different experience, and it's great to be able to dial into that. Let's focus a little bit more on that. You segued a little bit early for me, your role in the Institute. So you are the chairman of which chapter?
So I'm the chairman of the Southern chapter.
Okay.
Which doesn't have a concrete map area. I guess it's just like below London down to, I would say, just before Devon.
Just that small patch of ground there. Yeah. It's
One
quite
of
a
the
vast area, isn't it? So how many members do you have, roughly, in your chapter?
It's actually unconfirmed. We're not really too sure. But we believe it is one of the bigger areas, and also biggest amount of clerk of works in that area. Just because the north is kind of split up a bit more.
Well, it is, yeah. There's a lot of grass up here, isn't there? But yeah, no. So tell me about your role there then. So you obviously enjoy it. I mean, you're passionate about the role. I can see that through your LinkedIn post, through speaking to you. And I'm also very pleased to say that one of your chapter meetings was solely to listen to the podcast between Jerry and I.
Yes, and it was quite informative, because
good.
We had a lot of clerk of works kind of step back and go, I need to I need to talk more. And that's what they came out of it with. A lot of the times was to communication, and also another big thing was realizing how much experience Jerry had, but also how much education he had with what he went through. Because there's about 4 other clerk of works we have in the Southern chapter who are involved with the chapter itself that did the course that Jerry did, and they talk about it all the time. And I remember, not growing up, but I remember when I was first in the Institute, I heard about it all the time from people such as like Trevor King. He would go on about it, and to me it was fascinating, because it made me think like, I wish I had that now. I wish there was a course out there where you could do that as a clerk of works.
Yeah.
Because I bet a young kid, 17 let's say, if he did that course and got out, in a year he'd be better than me.
I won't say that.
Technically wise.
I think, yeah. I do agree. A structured course would be beneficial, especially as the demand grows in the industry. But I do think experience is important.
Experience is definitely number one. I think I wouldn't have got where I am if it wasn't for... I got lucky with the first company I was with when I went through the apprenticeship. I think I was only an apprentice for about 2 years, which is a lot less than what you'd expect. Like, I think carpenters last 4 years before.
Yeah, I mean, I did it the old way, so mine was longer than that.
Oh, yeah, and I think it should be longer. But at the time, they didn't really know what to do with an apprentice clerk of works. It was kind of like it was a new thing. No one had ever done it. So I was just sent out with a lot of clerk of works. And that's where I say I was lucky, because the company I was with had 8 clerk of works at the time, which I would say is unheard of a little bit.
Really, yeah.
With a consultancy. And they would just drag me the project to project. I'd be in Andover, Basingstoke, Salisbury, Aldershot, a bit of everywhere. And they would, clip me around the head if I did something stupid or not massively. It's not like the old school where they're like, you idiot.
No, but you were taught. Yeah. And that's important. You were taught, but you were willing to learn.
Yeah.
That's important. And I think that's the sort of thing that we need more of.
100%.
So, and I know the Institute is pushing hard into that. In fact, the next podcast, I'll announce the date soon, will be with Joe.
Oh, Joe Kirby.
Joe Kirby from the Institute. And we're going to be talking about various things, which I won't go into now, but it'd be a good one to listen to. Yeah. So you've been chairman for how long?
So this will be my second year, starting from February when we had our annual general meeting, our AGM. But before that, I was secretary for 2 years, I believe, as well. So it's been pretty much 2 years secretary, 1 year chairman.
Tell me about the role then, as the chairman.
It's quite involved in a sense of the chairman, compared to the other officer roles, is a lot more communication rather than setting up the CPT meetings or the meetings in general every month. Yeah. So I get a lot of members reach out, or people that are not even members that want to reach out to go through the process of becoming a clerk of works.
That's really interesting. So is that a common thing or is that sporadic?
It's a bit sporadic. So currently I've already had... Obviously, in my company, there's going to be like one or two who aren't a full member yet, so I've got two currently. But I've had someone reach out from another consultancy who is a senior clerk of works, but wants to go through the program. I say program, I mean the report application process.
Sure.
And he's got, I believe he said like 2 or 3 other clerk of works, so I'll probably meet them at some point as well. They're asking for advice to how to go through it. And I also have a young man who's a contract administrator,
right,
for a local authority that wants to go up Institute of Clerk of Works and CIOB route. Okay. So he wants to go up the Institute of Clerk of Works, which I'm not telling him to go be a Clerk of Works, but I'm saying there's good opportunity in it, especially someone so young.
Huge potential, yeah. And we don't actually know what it's going to look like yet. I think.
No, and that's the fascinating thing, definitely.
Yeah, it's exciting. So you've got a really responsible position there in terms of the potential to bring people into the industry.
Yeah,
it's such a privilege to be in that position.
It's something I didn't realise till probably last year, when I had like 2 other young people, only like a year or 2 younger than me. That's when I kind of realised that I'm older in my head.
You can't,
and that's what I had to kind of
once you've learned it doesn't come out.
That's it. My nickname on sites is usually Old Man, which is like great. I blame my mentors for that, but so it is taking a step back, realizing I am young, and I need to push for it because, as you said, there's opportunity in it. There's really good opportunity in it.
Huge, not just opportunity for us, not just opportunity for the role, but opportunity for the people that are doing it, the people that are receiving the service, the industry as a wider service. Yeah. It's an incredible opportunity, and I really look forward to watching your career over the coming years. and I'd love to keep in touch with you more often after this podcast.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we'll see where this goes. But I know that I'm going to be pushing hard into things, and I'm going to be trying to do the same with you and various others. So watch this space because I think it could go somewhere really interesting. Before we wrap this up, just summarise in the best you can why you do what you do, why you feel it's so important, and what you want to do next.
I think I slowly realised after I did my apprenticeship and I was clerk of works for about 3 years at the time, I slowly realised I didn't want to be the guy that just bullied contractors to be like, get this done, get this done, get this done. And I started believing in the Institute of Clerk of Works a lot more. So I think I am a walking Clerk of Works Institute role. Go join. But for me, it's their motto, where it's ability, integrity, and vigilance. I believe in it quite a lot. I feel like it's what grounds me. where it's like your ability to learn, your ability to hold on, your integrity as a clerk of works, to be unbiased, your vigilance on site, your vigilance to keep learning. I try and use that to not kind of go off on a tangent or start going mental on like clients or contractors.
They're great words. They have great meaning. They've been standing for a long time.
Yes, yeah.
And I think you're absolutely right. If you set your foundations as a clerk of works on those values, then you won't go far wrong.
Yeah.
If anyone listening to this wants to know more about becoming a clerk of works, a construction inspectorate, I'm sure you won't mind me saying, Josh, get in touch with us. You can contact me via the podcast, contact Josh via his LinkedIn, or contact the Institute of Clerk of Works and Construction Inspectorate. They're a great bunch of people. They'll do anything they can for you to help you out. And we would love to hear from people that want to take on this role and help us to improve the industry from a Clerk of Works perspective. Thanks so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. It doesn't need to be the last time. I'm sure there'll be lots to talk about in the immediate future. So let's see where we end up in a few months' time. But thanks very much.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're most welcome.